I'm Paranormal Pete, and I'm on a journey to seek answers to the questions that have crossed all of our minds. What happens to us when we die? Is there an afterlife? I'm a regular guy who discovered the gift of psychic mediumship in my 30s. My passion for history and the unknown have put me right here, right now. My mantra for anything paranormal is, we don't know much and anything is possible. Join me as we find our way through the stories, evidence, and experiences of the paranormal and beyond in search of answers, even if that leads to more questions. Are you with me?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host Pete Orbea, and we're on WLTK-DB.com right behind me here. Make sure you go to the website and take some time and go through it. There's a lot of cool stuff. You can catch up on past shows with the audio version or the audio and video version. So you can find us on all the socials just under WLTK-DB. So check that out, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and all the good friends out there. So be sure you check out all the other shows that are on the station too, not just mine. If you like my show, you're going to like the other ones. There's great content Monday through Friday coming out on the station every week, from psychic mediumship shows to cryptid shows and true crime as well. So be sure you go through WLTK-DB.com. Very excited today for my special guest. She's an astrologer and a psychic medium. Jessica Lanyadoo is coming on the show today. So very excited for that. And this is a recorded show. So even if you miss when we air this and you just can't get to it, you can go back to the website and check out the podcast version. So you don't want to miss this one. And you can also find the podcast version of this show all wherever you get your favorite podcast from. Just look up WLTK-DB, and you can follow my show on Facebook at Paranormal Pete Show. So hope you go check that out. And if you like or follow it, then you'll know what's going on here. And I'll be announcing more guests coming up here. So stay tuned for that. I always have a lot of different exciting guests coming on talking about various topics, and we hope everyone has fun each week listening with us. And feel free to comment, and I'll be live commenting this show when it airs. And so if you've got questions, hopefully I can help answer. But I've got a few things coming up. Really excited. I'm up here in historic Port Campbell, Washington. So it's in Puget Sound, right across Puget Sound from Seattle. And so I've got some ghost walk tours coming up this summer, which is the first time ever. We've never done that before. So they'll be later in the evening, of course, since ghosts don't come out when it's light out, right? And then we've got some late night investigations coming up. So I'm really excited for those. And you can go to portgambleparanormal.com to see the dates, and you can book a reading with me there, get tickets for events. So it's all right there at portgambleparanormal.com. And I'm very excited about the OC Paracon coming up October 1st and 2nd down in Anaheim. And I'm super stoked to be a speaker and a panelist there. And I'll have a vendor table. So come by and say hello if you come to the conference. And you can go to ocparacon.com, and everything's right there, and you can get tickets. So get them up before they get sold out there for the event. And then I also host the Port Gamble Ghost Conference. This year's the 13th annual. And you can find all the information for that. It's going to be November 11th through 13th in the Historic Theater here in Port Gamble. And you can get all the info for that at portgamble.com. So lots of fun stuff coming up. But I'd like to bring my next guest up, and I'm really excited to talk to her. I've got a lot of questions, and I think she's going to have some great answers. And so Jessica's got more than 25 years of experience as a consulting astrologer and psychic medium. She believes no topic is taboo or off limits, and that's awesome. She's also the host of the popular weekly Astrology Plus advice show, Ghost of a Podcast, and the author of Astrology for Real Relationships. She's also the co-founder of Zodiac The Vote and the mastermind behind the Astrology Pro tool, Astrology for Days. She's lectured extensively and has spent 30 years honing her skills. You can join Jessica at patreon.com/Jessica Lanyadoo. She can also be found all over the internet at lovelanyadoo.com, and I'll put that on my page so you guys can find it. You'll have to go check out her website. It's awesome. She offers a lot of different things, and I think you're going to be able to spend a whole day discovering things in there. So without further ado, let's bring her on. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, what a great intro. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It's part of the gig, right?
I mean, I'll take it. I mean, it was very nice. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. This is I know you're super busy, and so I appreciate you carving time out to come on the show and talk to me. Our good friend Mike Beers referred me to you, and I'm so glad we could set this up today. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I always ask, this, your career, your life, everything, is this what you wanted to do? Growing up, is this what you wanted to do with your, with your career and make a living with it and help people? Is this kind of something you always wanted to do?
That's a great question. When I was little, wanted to be a social worker. And my family was like, that's a stupid goal. Don't be a social worker. And so I was like, okay, I'll be a therapist. And they were like, you're not going to be a therapist. And luckily, by the time I was like 12, 13, I fell in love with astrology, and I got my first astrology book for my 12th birthday. And so I honestly never really thought about like what to do for a career beyond social worker or therapist, which whatever. Obviously, I got the kibosh on that. And then I'm from Montreal, Quebec. And so there's a different educational system out there, but there's something called CEGEP, which is 2-year government funded college program. So it's not quite university, but it's like, I guess, like, I don't know what they would call it in the US, but
like a community college sort of
ish. Yeah. And so
okay.
I went to an alternative CEGEP, and there was an introduction to Jungian astrology taught there my first semester. And I was like, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do. And the intermediate class, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to pack my bags. So I did that in 1994. I moved to San Francisco to become an astrologer, and never really thought too much about it. I didn't believe in psychics or mediums. I didn't believe in animal communication until I had so much evidence in my own life, in my own private practice, that I couldn't deny it. And so I definitely didn't plan on that. But I, as a kid, wanted those things. I wanted those things to be true, but I never imagined that it was. So everything's kind of like, as cheesy as this sounds, it's kind of unfolded really organically and as perfectly as it could,
Well, I think, don't feel bad about how it sounds, because that's what we all want. We all want things to happen organically in the way they're supposed to, right? And so if you can have that experience, just own it and just be happy with.
It's one of these things, like, I'm, in my late 40s. So now I say that. I wouldn't have said that in my 30s. It's the gift of hindsight, the gift of like seeing the path from a vista allows you to see that it really unfolded, as I'm saying, like as it was meant to. At the time, my 20s and my 30s felt chaotic, and like I was just like feeling around the dark, just trusting my gut. But now I look back and I'm like, oh, this has been like a really intentional path, and it's kind of been step after step. And it's kind of a cool thing about aging, is getting
perspective.
Perspective.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like to me, you wanted to be a therapist, growing up, and I think that is such a noble profession. And in a way, I mean, you achieved that.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
It's true. The way that I work with my clients, or, on my podcast, is very much, I approach things from a counseling perspective. I'm interested in, this is not a vegan metaphor, so, be prepared. But I'm interested in giving people a hook, worms, a rod, bringing them to the lake, showing them how to get there on their own, not just giving them fishes. You know what I mean? I was a roundabout, but you followed me. So
well, it's like the old saying of, you could give a man a fish he can eat for a day, teach a person to fish they can eat for a lifetime.
Correct. That's my ambition. It's to really support people by counseling, not as a, a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, but counseling from the perspective of the myriad of my skills. And
Yeah.
that's, it's my joy. Like I love, love, love it.
And it's not really work when you love doing something
Correct.
either, right?
Although I will say it is work when it comes to emails. And all manner, like there's so much work around the work. So the part where we're actually like doing the thing, love, not labor. All the parts around that, yeah, let's not be idealistic. It's a little bit of labor. It's a lot
Sure.
of bit of labor. Social media, labor. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's a whole other job just to do
it is.
that.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. Well, tell us a little bit about your podcast, Ghost of a Podcast. What are some of the things that you cover on there? What's it all about?
Sure. I started it in 2018 because I saw what was coming in terms of the incredible social unrest and I mean, and the trauma and tragedy that is happening in the US. I also saw, an airborne pandemic coming. So I created this podcast as a resource to help people cultivate emotional intelligence, because I am of the mind that when we have emotional intelligence and there is true scarcity or trauma around us, we are better equipped to do the right thing. And for me, my tools are, I'm an astrologer, I'm a psychic medium. And so that's the perspective I come from. Every week on the show, the show's kind of cut into two halves. So the first half, I give a person a reading.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have them on live. Sometimes I just read their birth chart. And the other half, I'm doing like a horoscope for the week ahead, but it's not sun signs. It's just delineating the energies at play in the world and how it's likely to affect us as individuals, how it's likely to affect the people around you, and then how it's likely to play out on a social or political level. And so I am, my podcast, it's like my joy. I don't know how you feel about yours, but it's like, I just fucking love my show. I love getting to share my work on my terms with people week after week.
Yeah.
It's a joy. And for me, because, the last more than 25 years, I've been primarily a counselor. I've met one-on-one with clients and done that. It's not an appropriate place for me to bring my values, my politics. It's an appropriate place for me to show up wherever they are and meet my client where they are and not to assert too much of those things. So I love getting to share more of my worldview and the interconnection of all things, instead of just like, you're going to feel sad because Saturn square Venus. It's like, yeah, that. And here's what's happening in the broader social context, so that we can kind of understand that we are connected with things, which I find really empowering. And the last thing I'll say is I'm really passionate about, as a spiritual person, being politically aware and socially aware and engaged, because I feel that it's a good use of spiritual values is to treat others with empathy and kindness and back that up with action. And I feel like up until my podcast, there was never a platform that felt appropriate for me to do that.
Right.
So this is like, again, another joy for me to be able to do. Yeah.
And it's your platform, and it's all you.
Yeah. Self-published, self-promoted, like all that shit.
There's no outside factors that can alter things or skew things or spin things. So that's really great. And I kind of feel similar with mine too. And I think probably the thing I enjoy most about mine is meeting people and learning new things, learning new perspectives, and because it's all about learning. And I've been doing mediumship since 2014, and I consider myself a rookie in that game. Like it's going to be a long time, and I'll never know everything. None of us will until it's that time. For us to then experience for ourselves everything. So I kind of feel the same way. It's you have to have your own platform to be able to say what you need to and what you want to, and that means a lot. And you can really learn more about do you find you learn more about yourself the more you say things out loud?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like worth celebrating that it's because of technology that we are able to self-publish, and that people are able to find us. This is a new thing in human history. You
Yeah.
had to be affiliated with an institution historically in
Yeah.
order to have access to people, or people to have access to you. And it's such a powerful time in that way. I mean, there are a lot of pitfalls with it, but it's a really cool thing. And I love being able to like share ideas, learn things, and explore on all the realms.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just one thing, one
Yes.
focus or another. Yeah, that's great, because I think I like on your website you have astrology and woo.
Yes.
The woo woo.
The
Yeah.
woo, exactly. I just feel like I was like, what do I say? And then, because I did a website redesign in January, and I was just like, you know what? The umbrella of woo really works for me. I got a
Yeah.
lot of things under that umbrella, like a
Yeah.
lot of things, So thank you for appreciating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw that and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." That's yeah, because it does encompass a lot, and I kind of feel
Yeah.
like I need that umbrella too.
It's
Just
nice
because I
because
talk about so many different things and experience so many different things. Yeah, go ahead.
I hear no, I'm 100% with you. I think it's like even with astrology, I feel like people really want astrology from me. Astrology is very popular, and I am, I got my 10,000 hours. I'm very happy to talk about it all the time, but it scratches the surface. That's all of what I do, what I care about, what I'm
Yeah.
experienced with. And I think this is one of the downsides of the internet and everybody constantly self-defining, is that when you put this label or box on you, it can sometimes be liberating, and then we can kind of like outgrow the constraints of the box, and then it becomes so again
Yes.
is, I mean, that's not a technical term, but you knew what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to have an umbrella now and again, and also I
Yeah.
don't take myself too seriously, as you can probably tell, so it doesn't like worry me that people are like, but you're not saying all the things, because
Yeah.
yeah.
And you can't take yourself too seriously, or you're not being real. You know what I
Thank you.
mean?
Yes.
If you take yourself too seriously, you're not going to show your true
Yeah.
personality,
Yeah.
and thoughts about things. Well, I want to talk about your mediumship a little bit,
Great.
and kind of how you mentioned that you kind of maybe knew some things growing up, or at a younger age. How was it as a kid? Were you noticing things,
Yeah.
as being a medium? Like, how did you handle that? And did you have any sort of support system around you?
No to the last question,
Okay.
but I there's a bunch of ways that I noticed it as a child. There were many things I just knew.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, well, I'm smart. I didn't actually think I was smart, but I attributed it to my psychology, not my
Okay.
spirituality.
Okay.
Um, I I have this gift, and I don't want you to be jealous when I tell you about my gift. But I feel other people's pain. I don't feel their joy. I feel their pain. And so
Okay.
as a child, I was in chronic pain. I was sick all the time. And I was as well through my 20s, until in my later 20s, I started to realize, oh shit, I'm feeling this knee ache, and my client sitting across from me is having a knee ache. Wait a minute. And I started like practicing and practicing and realizing that as an empath, which again, don't be jealous, I can feel other people's pain. And when I am feeling someone else's pain, either there's like a calling for me to talk to them about it, or there's a calling for me to have a damn boundary and to, give people back their energy and hold on to my own. And that process, I look back now at my childhood and I'm like, oh, 80% of the discomfort and the pain I was in and the illness that I had was actually psychic, but showing up in my physical body.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the primary ways. I mean, yeah. How about you?
It's well, that's it's interesting that you're only kind of getting the negative
Yeah.
side of things. Well, I'm always been very empathic, just didn't understand it, growing up, and so I grew up in a very science fiction household, where
Lucky.
a lot of science fiction, right? And so I was always very open minded, big imagination and everything. But I also get I can get people's pains, physical pains, but I more often feel the emotional pains
Yeah. I get that too,
that
unfortunately.
people carry. But I also get the happy ones too. I get the happy stuff too. It's just, a different vibration. So I guess I'm
Luck of
lucky
the draw. You
lucky
got
in that.
you got the longer stick on this one.
I guess
mean,
so.
I'm not gonna lie. I wish that I had the empathetic imprint of other people's like healthiness, happiness, but never. I've never gotten that.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's because, you're kind of supposed to be part of your work, is maybe supposed to be kind of the alarm system for other people.
Yeah.
To,
I mean, call me canary for canary in the coal mine, and I'm there. I mean, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that could be part of it. Well, hey, we got to do a little. We got to pay the station bills here. We're going to take a quick short break here. We're on with Jessica Lanyadoo, Lanyadoo. Sorry,
Lanyadoo. It's okay. It's cool.
Jessica Lanyadoo, astrologer and psychic medium, and this is so fun so far. But we're going to be right back here on WLTK-DB.com. I'm your host Pete Orbea on the Paranormal Pete Show. We'll be right back here.
Brandon Wainwright, author of Tyson's Gift, How an 8-Pound Canine Became a Man's Greatest Spiritual Guide, and owner of Tyson's Gift Healing Arts, offers Reiki as well as color and sound modalities to anyone seeking physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing. While color and sound healing, a technique that brings balance and health to one's chakras and body, must be provided in person. Reiki, a Japanese form of energy healing, can be given in person or equally effectively from a distance. For more information or to make an appointment for a session, please visit TysonsGiftHealing.com. That's TysonsGiftHealing.com.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host, Pete Orbea, and today we have on special guest Jessica Lanyadoo from the Bay Area, right? You're coming in from the Bay Area?
Oakland, California.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Medium to medium, empath to empath.
Okay.
During COVID, what was your experience with the mass death? Because I haven't had the chance to talk to too many other mediums about this, and I certainly had a really intense experience, but what was yours?
So you must be psychic because I was going to ask something like that. So I mean, good job.
I don't want to brag, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more of the stress and the struggle of all the people surviving those who died, I think is what overshadowed those who died for me. I think it was more of feeling the world crying out, of course it's so tragic and sad for all those who lost their lives. But I think for some reason it was the living that really affected me more. And it kind of made me kind of go inward a little bit, to be honest, because it was pretty intense. I'm a Star Wars fan, and I always think of it like Obi-Wan Kenobi falling over saying, I just felt as if millions of voices just cried out. And it was like, for me, that's kind of what it was more affecting was the living. So talk about your experience a little bit.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I'll just say before I share my experience is just, because we're both empaths and we're both mediums. Again, short stick, long stick, I don't know. It sounds like two short sticks is what we're going to talk about here. But it's just a little bit, it's really fascinating to me how our guides, the universe, fate, whatever, makes a call about who experiences what. I mean, for me, it was all dead people all the time. It was sometimes hundreds of dead people in my house. Sometimes, hopping in the old meat suit. It was a very, very difficult experience. I mean, it still is, honestly. It's nothing like it was. It really similar to you. I couldn't. It was rough. It was
Yeah.
painful because everyone that died was really scared. And it's not an easy passage. But I also think the kind of gift of it was I was able to help people cross over who were just kind of too like tied up. They couldn't let
Yeah.
themselves go.
Yep.
But it was really rough, and it, you know, gave me a different take on the pandemic than a lot of my friends who are not mediums have had, because
Yeah.
it's one thing to read the news or to have an experience with friends or family. It's another thing to be like, you know, experiencing masses of people
Yeah, at all times of the day,
at all times of the day and night, at all times of the day and night. And it's, yeah, it's a really, as a medium to live through this global pandemic where there are so many deaths all at once from the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, again, short stick, maybe, situation. Like it's not an easy experience.
Yeah.
But it is, you know, it is one of those things that for me affirms like, okay, well, we're all here now for a reason.
Right.
And for whatever it's worth, this is what I'm, you know, what I've been doing. So it's been quite difficult, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah. And I think, you know, I feel that a lot of those who did pass, you know, by now have found their way.
Yeah.
And had the time to kind of process, you know, leaving this life too early. And even if you're old, sometimes it's too early, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think a lot of, I think the vast majority have kind of found their way through their own, you know, taken some of their own religious beliefs that they had here in this life. They've kind of found their way and gone to, you know, whatever the proverbial light is. And yeah, I could see, you know, it was overwhelming for me, but I think it's because I was just feeling everybody's, you know, stress and
Yes.
panic and fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and all that stuff. But you know, on a positive note, though, I think that many people did kind of discover themselves in a way that they weren't able to before because of the hustle and bustle of regular life.
Yes.
And so, you know, I try and think about that too, along with the whole pandemic of people finding, you know, what I'm doing in life, what I've been doing, it's not really what I want to do. Now I have the opportunity to find something I love to do.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people were able to, I don't know if take advantage is the best term, but, you know, use that opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, well, it makes me want to ask you about, so being empathic and that you short stick for you, with feeling everybody's negativity or the actual physical pains. What's kind of your process, if you can share, how you kind of center yourself or, you know, wash all that goo off? Because and I don't know how you see it. So this could be a second part of the question is I see it as like a black goo almost, or a black cloud. When you're soaking up, you know, people who are soaking up everyone else's crap, you know, it builds up on you like you're like a negative energy Sherpa, right?
Yeah.
And you know, how do you see it, and what's your process for kind of, you know, I've had enough. Whew, I need to just reset.
Okay. Good questions. Good questions. The way I describe it, not the way I see it, is that I am like black velvet and other people's shit are like the white Persian cat hairs that just stick upon me. That's the way I describe it to people. It's not really my visual for it.
Yeah.
I'm not as much of a visual processor, but that is the way I describe it. Okay, wait, let me just ground back into your question about how I ground.
Yeah.
I do so many things every day. Some things I don't like to talk about just because I think with spiritual practice, it's important to keep things private, to keep things sacred. But I am every day connecting to my guides, clearing the dead, because I often will have dead around me. and clearing them to help them, not to be like, fuck you, like I'm helping them along.
Yeah.
I find, well, in terms of a visual, when I get other people's energies off of social media, like if they're coming specifically off of the computer, it has a tinny feeling to it. That's the best way I can put it. Like, I think that's just how my guides let me know, like, how to differentiate. So it has a little bit of a tinny feeling to it.
Do you get kind of a metal taste in your mouth?
Like a metal taste in me, not in my mouth as much as
Okay.
in me. I do get like, I get that, like, I mean, sorry, I was going to be like, but when I get blood in my mouth taste, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I get like a tinny, it's like an awareness that I have a taste, but not an actual taste, is the best way to describe it.
Gotcha.
And and it depends. Like if I'm getting triggered by someone who resonates with one of my own personal issues, it gets in my blind spot. And if it's from somebody who I'm like, oh, okay, I interacted with these people, or it's coming from that client, it's easier for me to like see it and move it along. But in terms of grounding, for me, it's about getting present, bringing my energy back into my physical body and my energy body, and then trying to flush out or clear whatever is not mine. And then to shield. And the shielding is a huge part of my day because the shielding, I feel like for every empath, every medium, shielding, it's like, just like putting on pants. Kind of got to do it,
One leg at a time, though.
God willing. So yeah. So for me, that's a big part of what I'm doing, and setting and resetting and setting and resetting. So I don't know if I've exactly answered your question, but
no,
yeah.
I mean, that's that's good. It's good that you have, that you've kind of figured out what works for you, and everybody's got to figure out what it is that works for them, because it's not the same for everybody. And I respect everybody's way of doing things, because I'm not them. So
yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it evolves with time. Like the things I've been doing during COVID are different than what I was doing before. Sometimes it's like, a serious job, and sometimes it's like a thing I have to remember to do. It ebbs and flows. And I think for anyone who's, highly sensitive in any way, it is important to not be perfectionistic. It is important to kind of be with that ebb and flow. It's just like, it's part of the dance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You have to be nimble, I was going to say.
Yes.
And you have to be open. You don't get so set in like, this is what I have to do. This is the only way to do it, because it does change. How has your, I want to get into the astrology stuff a little bit here, but tying in the mediumship. Yeah. And so over the years, if you can describe, how has your mediumship developed over the years? How has that changed? Are you getting information from different places than you did 20 years ago? You know what I mean? Like, is it changing?
I would say not exactly. The one really big thing that's changed is that typically most of my life, when I've communicated with the dead, they hop in my body, they show me how they feel, they show me what they're thinking. I just feel it. I think it, and it's quick and it's easy. And I love it, except for it's terrible for my body. It's like hell on the body. And it's hard to sometimes clear them. They're like, oh, this is comfy. And I'm like, not for me. But for them, it is. So, I have done a couple events at the Spiritualist Church in San Francisco. You know about them, eh?
I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Spiritualism is... or the Spiritualist Church, I believe it was developed in the early 1900s, and it is this church of mediums. And they do, their services are a medium stands at the pulpit and gives readings to the people in the room. And once a week, I think, some of the people there do energy clearings. It's a really cool church. It's primarily in North America and in Europe. Anyways, I did a couple events at the Spiritualist Church in San Francisco, I think 2019, 2018. And there was a couple hundred people at each. And that hammered me so much that I was
I
like,
bet.
I really need to not let them in my body. That cannot be the way I do it. So in more recent years, I've been really trying to develop a way of communicating and getting information that's not allowing folks in my body. And that's just a little bit slower. It's not slow. I'm just impatient. So it's a little bit slower. But it is definitely healthier and more sustainable for this old aging meat suit I got, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are a physical medium then, it sounds like. And
I
that,
didn't know there was a difference.
so I would, if I'm going to label myself, I would say that I'm more of an evidential medium, but that also ties into being a mental medium, where it's I'm doing what you were just saying, at the end there, by developing a way to communicate but not let them in. And a physical medium is, traditionally is known to be someone who has things come enter their body,
Yeah.
and that is. I've read a lot about it. It does sound like it's super draining and really hard on the person
It
who's
is.
allowing it, and you have to stay like super hydrated. I've only had one experience that I can think of, or that I should say that I was conscious for, like not sleeping,
Mhm.
where a spirit was standing behind me. I was sitting in this chair right here, and I could feel the presence behind me, and it was like they were pushing down on my shoulders and standing over me, trying to come in.
Mm.
And it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I was like, I don't know if I want that. And so
Yeah.
I fought it, but I literally got pushed down, sunk down into my chair, and I couldn't get up. And then finally it left. And then, that experience stuck with me for a day or two, the feelings I was getting. So,
I'm
you know,
sure. It's
kudos to
very
you if
intense.
you can do it. So,
I mean, it's interesting. I'm not trained, and so I didn't never even heard these terms. But I don't recommend it during a global pandemic, being a
Yeah.
physical medium.
yeah.
Just not on my to-do list. But
Yeah.
it is intense, and I'm capable of doing it the other way, or other ways. But
Mhm.
honestly, it's like short-term easiest for me.
Mhm.
It's short-term
Yeah.
easiest for me to just let them in. Just the breadth of information that I can get is so much greater,
Yeah.
because I'm experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole damn thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's double-edged. It's a curse
Yes,
and a blessing. And
you got that right, mister. You got that
yeah.
right. Yeah,
And you learned that right away, I'm sure.
sure. Yes. Mhm.
So let me ask this: when you are not doing sort of the physical thing, and you're working on the other part of the thing, where do you think you get your information? Like, how is it coming in? So,
Mm.
for example, early on in my journey, it was, if I describe it as a very organic, sort of earthy, getting my information from here, from this physical world, right?
Yeah.
And now, over the years, it's coming from the stars. It's coming
Mm.
from out there. So, with your work in astrology, in that you're studying it and you're practicing it every day, or do you feel like you're getting some of your information from
Mm.
out there, or is it more
Interesting.
is it
I
more
don't usually
physical?
think about it. I
Okay.
don't know. You know, as an astrologer, and I'll say, like, this is where it gets like hard for me to decipher, because I have been formally studying astrology since 1991 or 2. I'm
Okay.
not counting when I was 12 years old and studying
Sure.
like a crappy book, but like formally studying since 91, 92. And I've literally dedicated my life since 1994 to the practice and study of astrology. So I've
Yeah.
such an integrated and applied base of knowledge in astrology that when I'm reading a birth chart or reading an event chart, it's hard for me to decipher between what I'm getting psychically and what I'm able to read through this language of symbols, right?
Sure.
So that for me is a little bit tricky sometimes. And I will often, I'm also an animal communicator. So something that comes up to me as a great example is like, I recently was talking to a dog, two dogs, but whatever, focusing on one dog. I was talking to this dog for this woman. And the dog was telling me all these things about the woman's mental health. And I could tell some of the information I was getting was the dog was telling me. And some of the information I was getting to supplement what the dog was telling me was from my guides. So it is from, I say my guides, honestly, because it's easiest thing to say. Not like I'm seeing my guides and I'm hearing them speak. I have this, the best way for me to describe it is this like access point to this really high-speed internet.
Yeah.
And all I got to do is kind of like put the start of my inquiry in the search bar, and it tends to auto-populate correctly, and I tend to get a pretty quick response. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So that's what I know. And whether that comes from, up there, down here, roundabouts, I haven't overthought it because I'm too busy trying to get the best possible answer. So this is where my like, you mentioned at the very beginning that you're really imaginative. And this is something that a lot of people are surprised about with me. I'm not imaginative at all. And I know what I do is pretty out there and woo. But to me, because it's so evidential, like I have so much evidence to back up all the things I do, it doesn't seem even remotely woo to me, like out there woo, like it's woo woo, but it's not like there's so many things like the cloud. I don't believe in the cloud. Technically, I know it works, but I don't understand it. The cloud seems more wild to me than talking to dead people or dogs. You know what I mean? Because the cloud is like, it doesn't consistently work for me, whereas being psychic does.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I answered that, but that's what you're getting. That's what I got for you right now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, all good stuff. All good stuff.
Thank you.
So, how does the mediumship, does it just, well, one thing I want to say, just based on what you were just saying, your guides, you're saying that in your work in astrology, as an astrologer, symbols, you're living in the symbols, you're deciphering the symbols. Well, think of your guides as symbols. Right. Do you think of them like certain information is coming from a certain guide, and that's almost like a certain symbol. I just learned the other day on my show from my guest that she's a medium, and she has kind of developed her own symbols for what certain things mean.
I've seen a lot of mediums do this.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like with all the symbols, like, I think it sounds like you've already got the mediumship symbols.
Yeah.
And it's all about deciphering those. But my question to you is as an astrologer and all the work that you're doing, how intermingled is the mediumship with the astrology? Do you kind of pull from both for one goal?
Yeah, so the answer, I hope, is not confusing because it's both and neither. So astrology is astrology, mediumship is mediumship, psychic empath, that gets a little smooshy, psychic medium gets a little smooshy, animal communication psychic gets a little smooshy, but astrology feels like its own thing because it's an analytic practice, whereas all these other things in the woo umbrella aren't analytic. They are more requiring more receptivity without as much, it's not as much of a technical thing, whereas astrology is a lot of math. That said, when I'm doing a reading for someone, I never think about what methodology am I using. I just use what works. So again, if I go back to my search engine, like I don't really care if my search engine's bringing me to, a website designed on Squarespace or on Wix or whatever. Like I just go to the website and I get the information. I keep on moving. So for me, it's I do use them kind of like very fluidly, a little interchangeably on the outside, but in terms of like how I think of and use astrology, it is quite different because it's math, and all this other stuff isn't math at all. I think it can be just as precise, sometimes more precise, but it's not math. It's different.
Yeah. Well, and I was always interested in astronomy growing up, and I was lucky enough that my local high school had a planetarium.
Very lucky.
And so I got to go on field trips all growing up. But then when I got to high school, I actually got to take astronomy in the planetarium for 2 years. Astronomy
That's
1
so
and 2
cool. Where did you go to high school?
in Boise, Idaho. That's where I'm
In
from.
Boise. I'm shocked to hear that that's a thing in Idaho, but only in Boise. I get it, but still,
Yeah,
that's impressive.
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was all about the math, and everything has a number. Everything is math.
Everything has a number. Yes.
And so very interesting. So how many billions of dollars, if you had a dime for every time someone asked about their love life, how many billions of dollars would you have?
I mean, a lot of them, so much I wouldn't have to count. You know what I mean? Like just that much. People ask about love all the time. Yes.
And you even wrote a book about it.
I sure
Astrology
did.
for Real Relationships. Yep. And so tell us a little bit about the book and kind of where you came from in putting that together.
So the book is, yes, about relationships. It's broken into 3 sections: friends and chosen family. So like your community and your friends, right? Okay. Then there's early stages of dating and hookups, which may or may not be angling towards long-term. And then there's long-term relationships. My approach to all forms of relationships is, gender inclusive, sexuality inclusive, not making the assumption that, it's going to be boy girl, or that somebody wants to be married or whatever it is. And it is very much, yes, about relationships, but it's not at all about relationships. What it's really about is knowing yourself, accepting what's happening in the moment, and taking using your agency around how you engage with others, what you consent to participate in, all that kind of good stuff. So the book teaches astrology, but it also teaches, hopefully, accountability, intimacy issues, emotional maturity, all that kind of good stuff. So it is about relationships, but it's also, I would like to say, about being a good person. And by good, I don't mean that in a value judgment way. I mean an effective, empathetic, whole person, Yeah. So that's the move with it. Hopefully my next book, if I write another book, writing is terrible. So I'd like to say in front of everyone that I don't know that I will ever write another book. But if I do, I hope for it to be about like depression or something a little less fun. Because again, that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Yeah. You're in the trenches.
I love the trenches.
In that. Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you want to teach people how to kind of go inward. You got to learn about, I like that you said the accountability thing, and it's the same thing with mediumship. Like anybody who's like trying to develop it, or that you got to go inwards first.
Yes.
You got to go in before you can look out.
Yep.
And so that's really cool. Well, I hope you will write another book.
Thank you.
I'll send you good energy to do that.
Thank you. It's a slog.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things you talked about earlier was, you can give someone a fish and they'll eat for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. And you have the Astrology for Days tutorial. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think I'm going to do it.
That's exciting. Okay, so basically what Astrology for Days is it's the tool that I use every day, but also especially in the first 10, 15 years of my study and practice of astrology, I did like an analog slow version of it. So this is the digital fast version of it.
Okay.
What it is a calendar. You look at it per month, and then every day, all of the transits are written. So you don't have to do the math for yourself. There's an ephemeris in the app. And then there's a function of nodes. So you can track where all the transits are on a given day.
Okay.
And then write notes. So this is a great tool for if you're learning astrology, you can be like, my intuition is, or all these different astrologers saying, you can write notes about what you think is going to happen. And then when the transit actually comes, not only do you have this invaluable learning resource because you were able to see, oh, I was super wrong about X. That is not how it played out, but fascinatingly, it played out this way. That's how you really learn. It's through experience, as you know, right? So it's a tool for that. It's also a tool for, for people like me who, we've already, been doing that for 20 something years. I track all manner of things through it. I don't make decisions to hop on a podcast or to do anything like that without checking the transits, because I want to be effective. I want to flow with the energy instead of against the energy.
Yeah.
So, today Venus and Uranus are conjoined in Taurus. I knew we were going to have fun. So here we are.
We are having fun.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's like a web-based subscription, which basically means it doesn't matter if you have an Android or a Mac device. It's just, you can do it on your phone, computer, iPad, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's at astrologyfordays.com. It's also on my website.
Yeah. That's really cool that you put that out there, just to give people the tools and the format and the formula to kind of do things. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's semi tongue in cheek here, because the last few years, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, Mercury's in retrograde, and so that's why this is happening, or that's why this is." I've even caught myself. It was about a month ago or so where I was like, "What in the heck is going on out there?"
Mercury was retrograde about a month ago.
Yeah, that was like making everybody just wonky. I don't know how to say it, but can you describe Mercury retrograde and the effects?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked. So, fun fact, Mercury governs our thoughts, our attitudes, our communication, how we listen, DMs, technology, like all these things. So Mercury retrograde has become a much bigger deal because of technology, but also since COVID, because so many of us are living more digitally than we were before, right? And social media has kind of risen in prominence even more. So we really feel Mercury retrograde now. Mercury governs our friends, our neighborhood, just basically like what you say. It's your, like I said, DMs, emails, phone calls, all that stuff. So that's Mercury when it's functioning properly. And fun fact, Mercury is not in retrograde. It is retrograde. But the fact that so many people say Mercury is in retrograde is so Mercury retrograde, because Mercury governs grammar and people use grammar incorrectly during Mercury retrograde. It is one of those things that is both drives me nuts and also thrills me in equal measure. But anyways, that's an aside. So when Mercury is retrograde, it appears to be moving backwards. It's not actually, but it appears to be moving backwards through the zodiacal degrees. And when it moves backwards, just like any planet, when it retrogrades, it is, it's kind of typical functions, its optimal functions are literally moving backwards. And so what we have is the functions of Mercury: communication, listening, DMing, all that stuff. It's not working the way it's supposed to. And the reason why is because we are meant during cycles of Mercury retrograde, which happen a couple times a year, every single year, to turn within, to follow the rule of Re's, reflect, reassess, recalibrate. And if we didn't have these retrogrades, we wouldn't ever slow down. And what happens is Mercury forces you to slow down by making everything break and nothing work. And miscommunications happen so that you have to like check in with yourself and be like, what did I actually say to this person? You have to reread your emails or whatever. That's Mercury retrograde.
That's amazing. Okay, so that puts it in a whole new light. It's instead of trying to go against the grain on it, is to go with it.
Yes. Follow the rule of Re's.
Right. And reassess. And okay. Wow. Yeah. That's my mind is blown. Thank you.
I'm so thrilled. When I figured out how to describe it based on the rule of Re's, it was just like, I was like, oh, finally I can really help people by not like trying to get technical or whatever. And the rule of Re's is easy to remember. And any kind of Re, you can like throw it in there, but it's Mercury retrogrades. I find deeply annoying because I'm a person and I work on the computer, but also like as a spiritual person who wants to heal, I recognize it as an important resource because it resets us from thinking something that's actually not right, from going down a path with friends or with colleagues that you don't want to go down. It's a really important reset. And I think that, again, back to emotional intelligence, one of the things that astrology supports us in doing is kind of delineating what season it is. Is it season for pushing? Is it season for yielding? Is it season for learning? Is it season for listening or, teaching, whatever it is?
Yeah.
This to me is so nice to know that there is some sort of order, and that order you can learn, and there's a math to it. Sci-fi nerd to sci-fi nerd, I feel like that is something that we can get behind as a people. You know what I
Indeed.
mean?
Yeah.
I'm super into it.
Yeah.
I'm super into it.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool. And I just was thinking while you were talking about that it's, and you mentioned that we would never stop,
Yes.
with Mercury. It's like a spiritual timeout.
Yes.
Like, because if we never stopped, we would end up burning out in the long run, right?
Yes.
You end up kind of going out like a meteorite. It flashes in the Earth's atmosphere for a short time, and then whoops, it's gone.
Yep.
There's
Yeah,
nothing
exactly.
left.
Somebody just asked me recently on my Patreon about like, why is it that we have to, and this is kind of the same, but kind of different, but bear with me. Why is it that we have to ask our guides or ask the universe to help us to manifest things? Why don't we just, if we want the thing, why don't our guides just help us? And my answer was kind of connected to what you're talking about this and what we're talking about with the retrograde. It's, we have to get in alignment with our best interest. We can't just have what we want. What is, it's like, what is that called? Being a happiness pump or something like that doesn't work. It's about getting in alignment. And a good way to get in alignment, not a fun way, but a good way, is to have the universe stop you in your tracks so that you have to reassess and you have to listen. You have to reflect. This is what empowers us to get in alignment by seeing where we're not in alignment.
Yeah.
And that's invaluable. I mean, it's annoying, but it's really valuable.
That's all great. And my gosh, our time is up here.
Damn.
And I feel like we could have talked for hours, but
At least 3 more. At least 3 more. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me.
thank you so much. And I'd love to have you back on, get an update on your work and talk about more facets of all the work that you do. So I'd love to have you back. And we're with special guests, Jessica Lanyadoo here, and go to lovelanyadoo.com to check out her website, to see all the services, her blog, her podcast, Ghost of a Podcast. And just to see, she offers so much. And if you want interested in a reading and stuff, to go through the website. And it's been so much fun. And I leave every show with a toast that the past is history and the future is a mystery, but today's a gift because it's the present. And there it is, being present, taking time to be present each day. Don't forget it. Hug the ones you're with, hug everyone else virtually a little while longer. And we'll see you next week on the Paranormal Pete Show. Thanks again, Jessica. This was so much fun. And we'll look forward to seeing your work in the future. And with that, everyone have a great week. And we'll see you soon on WLTK-DB.com. Bye-bye.
Bye.